After waiting for quite some time, the front door finally opened. Michelle's mother stepped back behind her husband, who stood firmly in the doorway after she opened the door. I straightened my back and greeted her parents. "Nice to meet you. My name is Kevin Miller. Thank you for making time to meet me today. I heard you like pecan pie, so I brought some. I hope you like it." I handed over the gift bag. Michelle's father signaled his wife with a nod, and she took the bag from me and stepped back. The father remained standing firmly in the doorway, with no intention of inviting me in. He looked at me from head to toe, judging with a cold gaze.
"A poor guy in a cheap suit."
Michelle rebutted her father's remark.
Dad, isn't that a bit harsh? Kevin is sincere, kind, and a wonderful person. And he's dressed appropriately for a marriage proposal. Judging him as some poor guy in a cheap suit isn't fair.
The suit I was wearing wasn't tailor-made, but rather off the shelf, so it didn't fit perfectly. However, I had chosen a black suit, a pristine white shirt, a subdued tie, and black leather shoes, so I'm sure I wasn't being disrespectful. "It's okay," I reassured Michelle, and looked at her father. "I apologize. I'll be more mindful next time." I didn't want to create any bad vibe at this point. After all, I came for their approval for our marriage.
Dad, can we go inside now?
Michelle was starting to take off her shoes. "No," her father sternly replied.
"You, an overreaching poor man, should just leave. I won't hand my daughter to someone at the bottom of society."
I had decided to be patient, no matter what was said, hoping to gain approval for our marriage. But his words made my blood boil. "Excuse me, but isn't that a bit rude?" I tried to object, but was interrupted.
"Your company is probably just some flimsy small business, right, with hardly any pay. Michelle will surely struggle if she marries you. Only someone in an elite position like me suits to marry her."
Michelle raised her voice in defense.
Dad, Kevin is.
"Enough. Be quiet. Whatever you say is pointless. I will never approve this marriage."
It was clear to me that nothing would be heard at this point. I decided it was best to leave Michelle's home.
I'm so sorry. This is why I didn't want to bring you here.
Michelle apologized, looking remorseful. Michelle and I met at a college club, where she was my junior. Being 2 years younger, Michelle was always passionate in whatever she did. Even when things didn't go well, she remained positive, bringing a good vibe to the club. Over time, I became attracted to her, and we began dating. Having graduated and started working before her, our opportunities to go on dates became less frequent. Still, she always supported me, cheerfully saying things like, "Just hearing your voice makes me happy and lifts my spirits." With her, I believed we could build a home full of smiles after marriage. Feeling this, I proposed to her after reaching a significant milestone at work. "Please, always stay by my side and keep smiling. Will you marry me?" In response to my words, Michelle showed the happiest smile I had ever seen and nodded.
Let's build a happy life together. Thank you.
After getting engaged, I expressed my desire to greet her parents about our marriage. However, Michelle hesitated, making a rare grimace.
My parents, especially my dad, are very stubborn and has a big ego. It might not be a pleasant experience for you.
I had never heard Michelle talk about her parents before. The reason, I learned for the first time, was that her parents had been controlling her since she was young, never really listening to her opinions. They had decided where she should study, both in high school and college. She never thought of going against their wishes.
But after meeting you, Kevin, my perspective changed.
As the club president, I came up with an event idea that had never been done before. I actively approached other colleges and organizations to discuss it and take action on my own. Many were inspired by my proactive nature. When job hunting, I didn't apply to the company my parents recommended, but chose a field of my own interest, securing a position. Even though the job was within commuting distance, I decided to move out and start living on my own after being hired. I often returned to my parents, but every time I was met with sarcasm and comments treating me as if I were their property. Gradually, I visited them less and less. By the time Michelle accepted my proposal, I only went back home during Thanksgiving and Christmas. Other than that, I just give them a brief call to update them. Upon getting engaged, instead of meeting in person, Michelle reported our engagement and her wishes for a formal introduction over the phone. Her father, who held a manager's position in a top tire company, took pride in his role. He had hoped for Michelle to marry someone from an elite background. When Michelle's father heard from her that I was a secretary, he opposed the marriage.
A secretary? You just manage schedules, right? That's not a promising future. I won't let my daughter marry a man with no prospects.
Michelle argued that this was not the case, but he wouldn't listen. Finally, she said that we would visit in 3 weeks on a Sunday and requested him to be available for a proper discussion. She then ended the call.
I only see myself marrying you, Kevin. If my parents continue opposing, I'm ready to cut ties.
Seeing Michelle so distressed, I smiled and embraced her, assuring her, "Don't worry, it won't come to that." A month later, Michelle's father would have no choice but to approve our marriage. That day, accompanied by my colleagues, I stood in front of the building where Michelle's father worked. I was dressed in a high-end tailored suit from a renowned tailor, which I had promised myself I wouldn't wear until I reached a certain level of success. Entering the lobby, I was met with an unusual scene. The executives were lined up, trembling. At the front stood the CEO with a pale face. Recognizing me, he started to apologize.
I deeply apologize for the terrible comments made by Mr. Smith. We'll make sure this never happens again. Please continue the business with us.
To them, my company was a major client. Terminating our contract would lead to significant losses.
Mr. Smith, apologize properly.
CEO yelled, causing Michelle's startled father to snap back to reality.
I had no idea. Michelle said you were a secretary.
His reluctance to admit his mistake was evident. The secretary part wasn't a lie. Just last week, I was appointed to CEO during the shareholders' meeting. I calmly replied, I had worked as the chairman's secretary at a large corporation with over 100,000 employees. My role was somewhat akin to an overprotective mother. When it comes to business trips, I'd handle flight tickets and hotel bookings, and on the day, make sure nothing was forgotten in the preparations. Flights can sometimes get canceled or delayed, so I'd always be careful and create a schedule with a buffer. If plans got delayed, I'd promptly contact clients or the reserved places to ensure minimal inconvenience on their end. For family birthdays, I'd arrange gifts and flowers. Not only would I shop on their behalf, but I'd also sometimes research beforehand to find something they'd truly appreciate. Occasionally, family members would ask favors of me. The role of an assistant is to always be proactive in preparations, ensuring their principal doesn't face any issues, and if something does go wrong, to handle it with minimal risks. And no matter what, the chairman's needs always come first. Naturally, I'd arrive at the office earlier than the chairman, and even if I had personal plans post-work, if the chairman needed something, I'd drop everything to handle it. Perfection is constantly demanded, and praise is rare. Over 5 years, I learned about management under the chairman, earned his trust, and was taught leadership. Later, when the previous CEO resigned, the chairman recommended me. After the board's approval, I was elected CEO during a shareholders' meeting. Michelle's father finally accepted the truth.
I deeply apologize. Please don't end our contract over my mistake. I'll face the consequences, but please spare the company.
Although he had been rude to me, he was loyal to his company and had a high reputation at work. Approaching Michelle's father, Yu had knelt on the floor with his knees bent. I placed a hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry. I had mentioned to the former CEO that Mr. Smith had opposed our marriage, but I had no idea it had come to this. Saying that, he turned to face the CEO. There is no need to worry. We have no intention of cutting off any deals. I merely stopped by today to introduce myself as the new CEO. Hearing this, not just the CEO but all the executives breathed a sigh of relief. I visited Michelle's family again for a marriage introduction. This time, I was led not just to the entrance, but into the living room and took a seat facing the sofa. Michelle and I have been seriously dating since our college days 8 years ago. I proposed to her recently, and we both wish to build a happy home full of smiles. Would you kindly give your blessing for our marriage? Her father nodded, and in response, he said,
Even after my rudeness the other day, you've come here so courteously. Thank you. I was prepared for a demotion or transfer, but I am deeply grateful you've been so considerate. Please, take good care of my daughter.
Michelle, who had been tense, finally relaxed her face.
Thank you, Dad.
Michelle's mother took out a handkerchief and wiped away her tears. With that, we've received permission to marry. Thank you for all your help.
I was astonished to hear that the former chairman had arranged for my father to give his consent to our marriage. We truly appreciate it.
At the wedding announcement gathering, Michelle and I expressed our gratitude to the chairman.
I'm just glad it worked out.
The chairman said with a smile. When I walked into the lobby and saw all the company executives standing there, pale and trembling in a line, I was shocked. Hearing this, the chairman laughed mischievously.
I thought I'd play a little prank, but I might have gone too far. I did apologize to the CEO.
Over the past 5 years, the chairman and I had become more like close family than boss and employee. I had told the chairman about my girlfriend from college days, and that I had proposed and gotten engaged. Not just that, but also that Michelle's father was a department head at a client company. When I told him that Michelle's father had opposed our marriage, he took matters into his own hands. He contacted the CEO of Michelle's father's company, Patterson, informing him about the harsh words he had spoken against me, who is about to become the new CEO. He said I was furious and mentioned that I would be visiting them soon. The CEO mistook this as a threat to end the business relationship, which led to all the ruckus.
After the storm comes a calm, they say.
The chairman laughed it off, but the CEO must have been petrified. I felt bad for him.
You got the green light for the wedding, but there might still be some issues leading up to the ceremony and reception. You think you'll be okay?
Michelle confidently replied.
We won't let our parents interfere. It's our wedding after all.
She was no longer the girl who had everything decided by her parents. There was a strong determination to live life on her own terms. I vowed to support and walk beside her, creating a home filled with smiles and happiness.